Welcome back to our channel for Sherlock Holmes series written by Arthur Conan Doyle. The Lion's Mane. I moved to Sussex some time back and my friend Watson had been busy in his practice. He had not met me for a long time. So here I write in my own words as to how I solved the mystery of the lion's mane. My villa is located on the southern slope of the mountain that offers a great view of the channel. A long, steep and slippery path leads to the beach below. Curves and hollows located here and there make for perfect swimming pools. The beach stretches for many miles in each direction with the exception of Point where the village of Fulworth can be found. Harold Stackhurst's coaching establishment is located half a mile off my house. This is called the Gables and houses many youngsters preparing for various professions. It also has many masters as teaching staff. Stackhurst was a popular scholar and we had been great friends ever since I arrived on the coast. The end of July 1907 saw a tremendous gale and high tide. The morning I talk about, the wind had subsided and everything was fresh. I took a stroll before breakfast to breathe in the fresh air. I heard a shout as I walked down the cliff path towards the beach and saw Harold Stackhurst wave at me. "How about a swim, Mr. Holmes?" he shouted. Macpherson had an early start and we might still find him here. Fitzroy Macpherson was the science master and he was a fine young man except for the fact that he had a heart trouble due to rheumatic fever. However, he was a natural athlete standing out in every sport, especially swimming. We suddenly saw the man as his head was visible above the edge of the cliff where the path ended. His entire figure was visible soon as he tottered like a drunken man. Then with a terrible cry, he fell flat upon his face. We ran forward and turned him on his back. It was clear that he was on the verge of death. His face was pale and his eyes were sunken. He muttered his last words, which were slurred and unclear, but I could figure out the last words that burst in a shriek from his quivering lips. "The lion's mane," he whispered. Then he half rose from the ground, flung his hands into the air and fell on his side. Fitzroy Macpherson was dead. He had been clad only his overcoat and trousers, and the overcoat that had been just flung around his shoulders now fell off. We stared in astonishment at his exposed back that had dark red lines running all across it. It was as if he had been whipped excessively by a thin flexible wire-like object. Blood dripped down his chin as he had bitten his lower lip in extreme pain. A shadow suddenly fell across us as we saw Jan Murdoch by our side. Murdoch was a thin, tall, dark man who taught mathematics at the establishment. He appeared to live in his own thoughts and little connected him to normal life. Murdoch had a furious temper. Once, Macpherson's little dog had bothered him, but Murdoch's reaction had been extreme. He had picked up and thrown the little creature through the glass window. But he seemed genuinely shocked now at the scene before us. "Oh my God," he exclaimed. "Poor fellow, how can I help?" "Were you with him?" I asked. "No, I was late this morning. I'm coming straight from the Gables. How can I help?" I asked him to rush to the police station and report the matter immediately, and he headed off speedily at once. I saw that the beach was completely deserted except for a couple of people who were headed for the village of Fulworth. I inspected the path to see the same footsteps ascending and descending. It was apparent that no one else had gone down to the beach that path in the morning. At one place, I spotted the print of an open hand with fingers towards the incline. This meant that Macpherson had fallen as he climbed up. At the bottom of the path lay the lagoon where he must have taken a swim. But therein lay the problem. The man had been on the beach for 15 minutes at the most, as Stackhurst had followed him from the Gables. Macpherson had gone for a swim but had suddenly changed his mind and put on his clothes hurriedly. The reason for this was that he had been beaten and tortured in the most savage manner possible. He only had the strength left to crawl away and die. But who had done this? There were small caves in the base of cliffs, but there was no room to hide in them as they were exposed by the direct sunlight. The distant figures on the beach were too far away to be connected with the crime in any manner. Only 2 or 3 fishing boats were visible at sea. I returned to the dead body to discover that a few people were gathered around it. Stackhurst had been joined by Jan Murdoch, who had brought the village constable Anderson with him. He heard everything, took notes, and drew me aside. "I'll be grateful for your advice, Mr. Holmes," he said. I instructed him to send for a doctor and that nothing should be moved. I searched the dead man's pocket to find his handkerchief, a large knife, and a small folding card case. I found a small piece of paper in it. A feminine hand had scrawled in it, "I will be there, you may be sure, Maud." This indicated at a love affair. We searched the base of the cliffs thoroughly and the body was moved to the Gables where the inquiry would take place. As I thought, nothing was discovered at the caves, but certain papers on Macpherson's desk indicated an intimacy with Miss Maud Bellamy of Fulworth. It seems a serious love affair, as the lady made an appointment to meet him, Stackhurst pointed out. "But a public bathing pool is hardly the place for a meeting like that," I replied. "It's sheer chance that Macpherson's students were not with him," he said. "Is it?" I asked. Stackhurst thought deeply before he replied. "Jan Murdoch held the students back," he said. "He insisted they do some algebraic demonstration before breakfast. Poor chap, he had taken it really bad." "They were not good friends?" I asked. "They weren't at a point in time," he replied, "but they have been very good friends for a year or more." "We must know more about the matter about the girl then," I declared. "Do you know her?" "Everyone does," Stackhurst replied. "She is a local beauty and daughter of old Tom Bellamy, who owns all the boats and bathing cots at Fulworth." I wanted to go there, and Stackhurst guided me to the village at the end of the beach. We reached a small brick house called the Heaven, where Bellamy resided. We spotted the mathematician Jan Murdoch exiting the house, and we confronted him on the road. He lost his cool when Stackhurst asked him what he was doing there. "I don't have to explain my private actions to you, sir," he said angrily. "The circumstances are such that your answer is needed," Stackhurst replied angrily too. "I have lost my only friend at the Gables today," Murdoch said, and walked away while Stackhurst stared angrily after him. I was suspicious now, and I thought Murdoch was guilty and escaping the scene of crime. I decided to visit the Bellamys to learn more. The middle-aged Mr. Bellamy was angry too. "No, sir, I'm not interested," he said. "Both me and my son here," he indicated towards a powerful man beside him, "think that Macpherson's attention toward Maud were insulting. Marriage was never mentioned, and yet letters were exchanged. They also met each other. She had no mother, and we, as her guardians, could not approve of such behavior." The lady in question appeared certainly. She was beautiful indeed. "I am aware of Fitzroy's death," she said. "Do not be afraid to tell me the details." "There is no reason why my sister should be dragged into the matter," her brother growled. Maud cast him a sharp, fierce look. "William, this is my business," she stated firmly. "If I can help find the person who did this, that's the least I can do for the one who is no more." She heard my companion narrate the events in a composed manner, which made me conclude that she also possessed a strong character apart from great beauty. It appeared that she knew who I was, because she turned to me finally to say, "Mr. Holmes, bring them to justice. You have all my assistance." "May I talk to you alone?" I asked. "Do not get mixed up in the matter, Maud," her father shouted angrily. "It's all right," I said. "The whole world will know the truth soon, and so let us discuss the matter here." I told them about the note that had been discovered in the dead man's pocket. "We were engaged to be married," Maud revealed. "We only kept it a secret because of Fitzroy's old uncle. He was near death and would have disinherited him if he married against his wishes. There was no other reason to keep our engagement a secret." "You could have told us that," Mr. Bellamy growled angrily. "I would if you had displayed some sympathy," Maud replied and produced a piece of paper. "Here, Mr. Holmes," she said. The appointment was in reply to this. I was supposed to meet him tonight. The message said, "Dearest, the old place on the beach just after sunset on Tuesday, FM." "But this did not come by post," I said. "Who delivered this?" "I cannot answer that," she replied. "That has nothing to do with the matter you are investigating, Mr. Holmes." "Did your fiancé have any enemies?" "None that I know of." "Was Jan Murdoch one of your many admirers?" I asked, and she blushed. "There was a time when he was," she admitted. "But that changed when he understood the relation between Fitzroy and me." We decided to search Jan Murdoch's room privately, but nothing was revealed. A week passed by, and even the inquiry had not thrown any light on the strange murder. Then Macpherson's dog was also found dead at the very place where its master had died. That the dog should die after the master was nothing strange, as that displayed the enormous devotion of a dog. But what was really strange was that the dog had died at the same spot. I went to the beach to see the faithful creature lying stiff, with the eyes projecting and limbs twisted. It had been in pain. My mind was racing as I walked home slowly. It all came to me when I reached the top of the path. I ran to my room and took out a big reference book. I raced to the chapter I was looking for, and it was rather late when I retired to bed. The next day, I summoned the senior inspector to my house. "Have you noticed the marks on victim's shoulder?" I inquired. "Do you see anything strange about them?" I have no idea, he confessed. Suddenly, my door was flung open and Jan Murdoch staggered inside. His clothes were in disarray and he had to hold on the furniture for support. Brandy, he groaned and collapsed on the sofa. Stackhurst arrived behind him panting. Yes, brandy, he exclaimed. That's what brought him here, as he fainted twice on the way. We poured some brandy in his mouth and he propped himself up with one arm and flung his coat away from his shoulders to cry out, Brandy, anything to ease this pain. The inspector and I cried out at the sight. The same pattern of red inflamed lines that we had seen on Macpherson's back were etched in a criss-cross way on Murdoch's shoulder. The agony was no doubt terrible, as the man's breathing would pause for a while and he would clutch his heart as his face turned black. He looked like he could die any minute. We applied pads of cotton wool soaked up in salad oil on his wounds, and this seemed to help. What is it, Mr. Holmes? Stackhurst demanded once we were assured that Murdoch's condition was stable. Where did you find him? I asked. On the beach at the same spot where we found Macpherson, he replied. He was reeling like a drunken man at the edge of the water when I spotted him. I ran down to him, covered him with some clothes and brought him here. Come with me now, I said to Stackhurst and Inspector. Let me deliver the murderer to you. I entrusted my housekeeper to take care of the unconscious Murdoch, and 3 of us travelled to the deadly blue lagoon. I walked about the edge of the water slowly. The pool was mostly shallow, but it was 4 to 5 feet deep under the cliff where the beach had hollowed out. This was where a swimmer would naturally head to, as it was a crystal clear green pool. My eyes found what they were looking for when we reached the deepest and stillest pool. Cynia, I shouted triumphantly. Behold the lion's mane. The strange object that I pointed at actually resembled a lion's mane. It rested on a rocky shelf 3 feet underwater. It was a strange hairy creature that waved and vibrated. It had streaks of silver on its yellow tresses. It had done enough, I stated. Come, Stackhurst, let us finish this murderous fiend once and for all. A huge boulder stood over the ledge and we pushed this with all our strength so that it landed on the water with a tremendous splash. We saw that it had fallen and settled straight on the ledge after the ripples had disappeared. A flappy edge of yellow hair showed that our victim was crushed underneath it. A thick oily discharge oozed out from under the boulder to stain the water around it as it rose to the surface. What is it, Mr. Holmes? The inspector exclaimed. I've been born and brought up in these parts, but I have never seen it before. It doesn't belong to Sussex. It's good for Sussex, it doesn't, I remarked. It must have been brought here by the southwest gale. Let's go back to my house and I shall reveal everything. We reached my study to see the Murdoch had recovered enough to sit up, although he still seemed dazed and in pain. I picked up a book. This is Out of Doors, written by famous observer J.G. Wood. Wood's account is accurate as he almost lost his life when he came into contact with the creature. It is called Sienna capillata and is more dangerous than any animal. The bite of a cobra is less painful actually. Let me read the extract, I said. It is a stinger. Its multiple threads cause light scarlet lines upon the skin. They release some dots that sting the body, and these dots are like 100 needles stinging the body at once. It sends pangs of pain through the chest. This book explains the tragedy of poor Macpherson perfectly, Inspector, I concluded. It also saves me, Murdoch said with a weary smile. But I do not blame you for suspecting me, Mr. Holmes. It was natural that you should do so. But how did you know? As I am an omnivorous reader, the phrase, the lion's mane, stuck at my head. I explained. I knew that I had read it somewhere. You know now that it is used to describe this dangerous creature. Yes, Murdoch said. But there is something I need to explain as well. The truth is that I love Maud. But when I saw that she liked and chose my friend Macpherson, I only wished for her happiness and nothing else. I was happy to stand aside and even act as their go-between. I often carried their messages, and I rushed to tell her of Macpherson's death only because she is dear to me, and I didn't want anyone to upset her by breaking the news in a heartless manner. She did not want to tell you all this lest you disapprove and I be the sufferer. Stackhurst extended his hand toward Murdoch. Forgive the past, Murdoch, he requested. We shall try and understand each other better in future. They went out together as friends, with their arms linked together as the inspector turned towards me. Well, you have done it, Mr. Holmes, he exclaimed. I had read about your exploits but had never believed in them. But now I do. You were listening to The Lion's Mane. If you have enjoyed this audiobook, then please subscribe to our channel. Thank you for being a Wordteller listener. We will be back with another audiobook shortly. Until then, happy listening.